Of course, one thing we all love to theorise about when it comes to Formula 1 is driver lineups for the future. Now, of course, it is the 2025 season currently. 2026 is just around the corner. Completely new set of regulations. But because drivers are scared not to make a big move ahead of a new set of regulations that could massively change everything, the lineups for 2026 are probably going to remain 80-85% the same. So I don't really see the 2026 driver market in terms of the driver market for the 2026 season being that exciting, other than will Max Verstappen go to Mercedes or not, which personally for 2026 I don't think will happen. But the driver market for the 2027 driver lineups I think is a lot more interesting, because by this time next year drivers will know who has the most competitive cars and who is looking good going forward for that new era, and drivers will make their moves appropriately based on that. So in this video, we are going to predict the 2027 driver lineups, which again is a lot more interesting than 2026. Before I go any further though, make sure to smash the like button, but most importantly, in the comments below, let me know your driver lineup predictions for 2027 for all 11 teams. Remember, of course, next year in 2026, we'll have Cadillac F1. So 11 teams we will be going through in this video. And talking of Cadillac, let's start with them. Now, in terms of their lineup in 2026, I think Valtteri Bottas is 100% going to be one of their drivers. But whoever is partnering him, I don't think will last, at least at Cadillac, until 2027. So Valtteri Bottas will still be there and will be basically the team leader. And partnering him, I think, will be Gabriele Bortoleto. The reason I think it'll be Bortoleto is because Bortoleto, whilst talented, I don't think will be someone that Audi will want to keep long term, because Audi will have many really good options to look at long term, especially if they've got, by the looks of it, a competitive looking team and car. And Bortoleto will suffer because of that. Even if Bortoleto is looking decent next year for Audi, if Audi can go and sign a really good, potentially good midfield level driver, even better, I think that's what Audi will probably try to do. And Bortoleto will suffer because of that, but I think will still stay on the grid, mainly because of the talent he does have, and I think he is good enough to be in Formula 1. So yeah, 2027 lineup for Cadillac, Bottas and Bortoleto. The next team, Racing Bulls, I think Liam Lawson will keep his seat at the team by this period, mainly because this team will need some sort of experience to carry them forward. Isaac Hadjar, who of course is currently a rookie, by this point I think he will definitely be moved on from the team, because either Red Bull will like what he's doing and promote him to their team, or someone else in the midfield will look to sign him. So Lawson, I think, will be at Racing Bulls. This might be, though, 2027, his final season. And partnering him is Nikola Solov, a driver that I will admit I have absolutely no idea about. All I know is that he is a talented driver currently in Formula 3, and he's part of the Red Bull Driver Academy. So this is basically a guesstimate. But yeah, Lawson and Solov, that's what I'm going for Racing Bulls. Now the next team, Williams, are a team that potentially could have a pretty fast car in the next era of Formula 1, especially having Mercedes power. And we know that from the rumours, Mercedes do sound like they've got the regulations more so correct at the moment than the other manufacturers. So Williams might be a really good team to race for, and a team that many drivers on the field, or many drivers outside of Formula 1, will look to join going forward, especially if they want to have strong results and a strong chance of good results going forward. Now, the current lineup is Alexander Albon and Carlos Sainz. I think those two will still be at Williams in 2026. But for 2027, I think both drivers will be gone. for reasons I'll get into later, but the replacements are interesting, I will say, at least in terms of who I've gone for. One of the replacements I think will be Yuki Tsunoda, a driver that I think will probably be still in the Red Bull system for 2026, but after that I think we'll look to move outside of the Red Bull system. And if there is a spot at Williams, I don't see why Williams wouldn't take Tsunoda on. He's a very good midfield driver at his best, and we know he can do a good job at that level. So I think Tsunoda will be a Williams driver for 2027, and partnering him will be very talented Irish driver Alex Dunn. A driver who is very fast, very talented, very also erratic, but there is clearly quite a bit of talent here. And Williams do tend to go for very talented, promising-looking drivers. They've always done that through their history, and I think they'll do that once again. So Alex Dunn, I think, will be a Williams driver. Of course, he's part of the McLaren system, but I don't see why McLaren would prevent him from going to Williams if there is that possibility. So yeah, for Williams, Alex Dunn and Yuki Tsunoda, if these two were to be at their absolute best, I think this would actually be a pretty good lineup for the Williams team. The next team on the list, Haas F1, I am keeping it Esteban Ocon and Oliver Bearman. I don't think there'll be any change here. Firstly, for Ocon, I don't see why Haas would get rid of him because he is one of the best midfield level drivers and is quite experienced in Formula 1 and will be, obviously, even more by this period. And if you go and look at the history of the Haas team, they normally, when they've found a driver they like, they tend to keep that driver at their team for quite a while. Whether it's Romain Grosjean in the past, Kevin Magnussen, even Nico Hülkenberg for, a couple years until he had to go and join this project with Sauber/Audi. That's what Haas tend to do. And I don't really see what other options Ocon is going to have going forward. I don't think he's going to be driving for a front-running team ever. That ship has sailed. So I think he'll be the team leader for Haas pretty much for the next few years. As for Oliver Bearman, the only other team I can see him going to is Ferrari, which of course that is his dream. He is a part of the Ferrari Driver Academy, but I don't think Bearman would have done enough by the end of 2026 to earn a seat at Ferrari, which is why I think Bearman will stay with the team and hopefully will prove himself even further later on. A team that will be Mercedes-powered in 2027 and also in 2026 is the Alpine team. Alpine, of course, have been quite the train wreck in the last few years. Let's hope they're not quite like that going forward into 2026. But I think it's pretty simple, at least from my point of view, as to what their driver lineup is probably going to be. Pierre Gasly, I think, will be still at this team because, one, he's French, and secondly, he is clearly established as the team leader. I don't see, if you're Alpine, why you get rid of the guy. He's easily good enough for what Alpine need. But, as we can see at the moment, Gasly needs a good enough teammate. But I think there's a clear option as to who Alpine will go with, as long as this driver keeps up what he's been doing in what is his rookie year this season in 2025. And it will be the young Frenchman Isaac Hadjar, I think, who will be teammates with Gasly for 2027. Two French drivers, and if they're both at their best, that would be probably just about the best lineup Alpine could possibly have. Yes, Alpine have got drivers in their system, but they don't really tend to use a lot of them. So I think Gasly and Hadjar is what they will go with. And if Alpine have got a decent car, that should be a decent midfield lineup for Alpine. Now let's get into the bigger boys for the new set of regulations. And we'll start with Audi. And Audi, of course, are a complete unknown going into this new set of regulations. We don't know what they're going to be like at all, whether they will be able to adjust. Coming into Formula 1, they've never been in Formula 1 whatsoever, whether it's been as an engine manufacturer or a team. So who knows what's going to happen. But if they do show some promise, they will start to attract some interest from some very talented drivers. Now, for Nico Hülkenberg, who is at the team for 2026, I think he will keep his seat. I don't see why he would suddenly drop off the pace. And also, he is German, which helps his case, with a German team. And yeah, he's still doing a good enough job. So I think Hülkenberg keeps his seat. But partnering him, I think, will be the teammate he had at Renault back in 2018, Carlos Sainz. And the reason I'm going with Carlos Sainz is because, one, Carlos, I think, is still looking for a way back to the sharp end of a Formula One grid. And no disrespect to Williams, I think they are less likely than Audi to provide that. But also, we know that he negotiated quite a bit with Audi, and I don't think that door is firmly closed in regards to the future. Sainz's contract is only until, I think, the end of 2026. So I think Carlos, Audi will show some promise, and I think Carlos will make the jump to Audi and hope to be their team leader long term. And then if Audi produce a great car in the next few years, Carlos is in a great position. So Sainz and Hülkenberg, I think, will be the lineup at Audi, which would be a really great one, especially if Carlos Sainz could get back to the level we know he can get to, along with what Hülkenberg has been doing as of late. For the green mean machine, Aston Martin, I think things are going to stay the same. Alonso and Stroll, obviously Stroll is always going to be at the team because his dad owns the team. And for Fernando Alonso, I think he will be keen to give the Aston Martin team a go in this new era of Formula One, especially with Adrian Newey designing the car. Because if he is to win that third elusive World Championship, he has to stay at Aston Martin and hope that not just Adrian Newey, but Honda, who will be powering Aston Martin in 2026, get it right. If they don't, Alonso's never going to win that third World Championship because there's no other team he realistically could go to that will give him that opportunity. He's not going to go to Ferrari or McLaren or Mercedes or Red Bull. It's just not going to happen. So I think they'll have the same lineup, but because Alonso is as old as he is, I think maybe right after 2027 we could see a change, but we'll see. Obviously, in the new era, whether Aston Martin do truly step up and provide championship level pace and whether they can be a championship contending team. Now on to Red Bull Racing, a team that has dominated this ground effect era, but they will not be doing that in this next new era of Formula One, mainly because I just don't think the partnership of Ford and Red Bull powertrains, I just don't think that's going to go that well, and it's going to take, I think, a bit of time for it to work as well at its peak. But also because of the way the Red Bull team has fallen apart since the Christian Horner allegations, Adrian Newey leaving, Jonathan Wheatley, and eventually Max Verstappen leaving, Red Bull will not be a championship winning team, but they will try to rebuild on the driver lineup side. And I believe that their driver lineup for 2027 will be Arvid Lindblad, a driver that Red Bull do rate quite a bit. He is quite young at the moment, but as long as he delivers the potential that he is showing, and he truly delivers the best version of himself in his career, I think he will eventually end up at Red Bull, especially once Max is gone, because Red Bull really won't have any other option to. Because if you look at their driver academy, they don't have, at the moment, the next Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel or even Daniel Ricciardo waiting in their academy. So Lindblad, I think, will be at Red Bull by this point. Probably next year at Racing Bulls, he'll be at the team. And then in 2027, he'll make the jump up to Red Bull. And his teammate, I think, will be Alexander Albon, who will probably be the team leader for Red Bull in 2027. Albon, we know, still has a great relationship with Red Bull. Obviously, was with the team for a couple of years, was the reserve driver, and again, still has a great relationship with the people there. And because of what he's doing at the moment for Williams, his stock is very high. And I think he will end up at a front running or a big team again. And I think he will go back to Red Bull. So for Red Bull, Lindblad and Albon, that's what I think their lineup will be. But Max Verstappen will be gone, and will be gone to you-know-who. Mercedes-Benz, who will have definitely, by far, in 2027, the strongest driver lineup on the grid of Max Verstappen and George Russell. But one thing I must make clear is I don't think Max will go to Mercedes for 2026. I think 2026 will be Max's final year at Red Bull. He'll give it a chance, see what the field's like, and then if Mercedes are truly a title-winning team or title-contending team, Max will make the jump to Mercedes and will partner George Russell, and Mercedes will have, again, the absolute best driver lineup on the grid. And let's hope this lineup does happen, because right now, Verstappen and Russell are the two best drivers in Formula 1, and it would be great to see head-to-head just who is the better driver, and just see them competing as regularly as possible with each other, because when they do, it is normally incredibly exciting stuff. Of course, there are many hopes for the Scuderia Ferrari team when it comes to this new era coming up next year. Whether Ferrari will deliver, we'll have to see. Of course, they have failed to deliver many times in the last 20 years or so, but they will still retain strength on the driver lineup side. Charles Leclerc, I think, will still be in place in 2027 because of his loyalty to the team. I think eventually he will leave Ferrari, but I don't think it'll be quite for 2027. But his teammate will not be Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, I don't think, will be racing with Ferrari by this point. 2026, I think, will be Lewis Hamilton's final season in Formula 1, where hopefully he'll give us one last real good year, and then I think he'll be done, because I don't think there is really much more for Hamilton to give, especially given that he is past his prime. So Hamilton will be gone, and replacing him will be the obvious choice, the Italian, and maybe the next big thing, Kimi Antonelli. This lineup of Leclerc and Antonelli would be fantastic, and not only fantastic in terms of having two really great drivers, but from Ferrari's perspective, if Leclerc does leave a couple years after 2027, with Antonelli, let's say Leclerc leaves in 2028 or 2029, Antonelli is going to be in his early 20s, and they'll have Antonelli as then the absolute team leader of Ferrari, potentially for the next 10 to 15 years. So they will already have Leclerc's potential successor as team leader already in the team if Leclerc decides to leave, which again, I think Leclerc will leave at the latest by the end of the 2020s decade. So that's what I think they'll do. Also, because he's Italian, Antonelli is eventually going to race for Ferrari. I think we all know that. And it's a dream made in heaven PR-wise. So, yeah, Leclerc and Antonelli, I think, will be the lineup in 2027. And finally, for the world champion team McLaren, it will remain the same. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Now, yes, this is not maybe the best driver lineup on the grid. These two are not the best on the grid overall, but they are effective for McLaren. They get the job done. They are going to be a partnership that's won 2 Constructors' Championships in a row by the end of 2025. And unless one of these drivers massively underperforms or causes massive toxicity within the team, like Fernando Alonso did back in 2007, there's no reason to change this lineup, especially if they are winning championships. And I expect McLaren to still be very strong in 2026 and beyond. So Norris and Piastri, I think, will still be the lineup, and probably will be the McLaren lineup until the end of the 2020s. And then after that, I think Piastri probably will move on to another big team, maybe Ferrari or Red Bull. We'll have to see. But those are my 2027 driver lineup predictions. Again, it's way more interesting to predict 2027 because a lot of drivers don't want to take any risks moving for next season when next year is such an unknown. It's the biggest new set of regulations 2026 since 2014. So yeah, it's not going to be, the driver market for the 2026 season is not going to be that exciting. But for the season after that we've just done, it should be pretty exciting. But guys, let me know in the comments section below, what are your predictions for the 2027 driver lineups? And give me maybe some of your reasons for why you think certain drivers will end up where, maybe why certain drivers will end up not on the grid. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say regarding this. But guys, until my next video, during this summer break period in 2025, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.